There are 31 games on the Duke men's basketball regular season schedule. 5 of them are in the books. What's the pulse check right now on Jon Scheyer's team? We discuss on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. So good to be with you here on Friday, November 24th, 2023. I hope that everyone had a very happy Thanksgiving yesterday with friends and family, got to enjoy great food, football, and excited to be diving back into the Duke basketball season so far on today's show. My good buddy Brian Horace at Duke Blogger on Twitter is back once again, long overdue. Excited to be talking about the season so far for Duke. 31 games on the schedule for the Blue Devils. 5 are complete. What do we know so far about this Duke team? What are we still trying to figure out? We'll discuss that and a whole lot more on our show here today. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to our podcast for free wherever you get your podcasts. Also, watch the show each and every day on YouTube. We're climbing towards 2,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for the support there, watching the show each and every day. Like this video, share it with your friends, and also follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils, and follow me there as well at _JJ_Jackson_. It's been a while since we've had a mailbag edition of the program. Any questions that you would like answered about the Duke basketball team, send them to us, LockedOnBlueDevils@gmail.com. So, without further ado, let's bring them on. It's my good pal, Brian Horace, who joins us once again here on the show. It's good to see you once again, Brian. Glad that basketball season is back, and you and I get a chance to talk about the Duke team we love so much.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Glad to be here.
All right, let's get into it, man. 5 games completed for this Duke team, a 4-1 start to the year. A lot was made about the schedule and the way that it's come together for Duke. It's kind of funny. We've been talking the past few weeks about this week in particular, that when it is feast week, when it is these primetime college basketball events that we're used to watching around the holidays, there's no Duke action that's taking place. They're hosting their own MTE. They're calling it the Blue Devil Challenge. It's been a little different change of pace with how the schedule is constructed this season.
Yeah, it's a little different, but I understand how they want to get this team, as they integrate new parts, they want to do that slowly. I mean, they've had some big games also, but yeah, it's weird not having them, be a team that's going against a real tough team and a real tough, MTE. But it's Shire's a different coach, and this is a different era.
We're finding other opportunities to play those games, right? We're seeing the home and home game with Arizona, and we'll return the trip out west next season. We're seeing games like Baylor later on. We've got this new partnership ACC-SEC challenge that's going to be played where Duke takes on Arkansas. We already saw Michigan State on the schedule for Duke this season. So really, really excited to kind of see these next games coming up for Duke. Before we get there, though, 5 games have been completed. If there was one thing that you can assuredly say about this Duke basketball team this season, what would that be?
That's a good one. I think they can score, and I also think the defense is still carrying on from last season. So I think the defense is probably the biggest thing. I think as long as you have a good defensive team, and they do, I think you can, weather a lot of different storms. So yeah, I think the defense.
Last season, we talked a lot about the defense. This season, we've talked about it a little bit. I've talked about the point of emphasis of, defending the paint and how that went for Duke a little bit earlier in the week against LaSalle. What I did not do was your first point, was the offense. And talking about this Duke offense in particular, they've done a really remarkable job in several games, heating up from the outside, being able to knock down shots from three-point range, making big adjustments with the slow starts, and we'll get to that a little bit later in the program. What I failed to mention earlier this week was that for the first time in the Jon Scheyer era, we've seen a Duke basketball team score 90-plus in consecutive games. Like, that is what I think we assuredly know, is that this Duke team has plenty of different options that can score night in and night out, and it is really going to be hard to slow this offense down.
Exactly. And I think as they learn each other, as they, get accustomed to each other, I think you're going to see those numbers, increase. I mean, I think, as you mentioned earlier, the slow starts to games, I think that a lot of that is just guys learning their roles, integrating these freshmen into what John Shire wants. So I think a lot of that, as they play these games, and that's one reason why I'm glad we have this MTE. It's going to give him a chance to sort of get, guys accustomed to their new roles, not having to play in Arizona every single night as you do it. So I think this is an excellent play by Shire to have this MTE.
Yeah, all that said, I don't know necessarily that 5 games in, we feel totally 100% confident in what everybody's role will be this season. I think we know the top 2 dogs with this Duke team are Filipowski and Proctor, and as they go, Duke is going to go this season. But it's been so fascinating that the offense has been awesome, and yet we still don't really know those things, right? We've seen really great games from Caleb Foster and Jared McCain. Jeremy Roach has been up and down in the scoring numbers so far this season. Sean Stewart has a career high earlier in the week, right? Like, it's been a lot of different players chipping in. We're still trying to define those roles, and yet the sum of it all has still been a really prolific offense.
And I think that's a good sign, because obviously teams are going to try to take away those first 2 options. And so if you can get guys like McCain, Stewart, Foster accustomed to being able to chip in, it's just going to make this team a lot better. I mean, I think you can't depend on necessarily Filipowski and Proctor every single night to bring, 18, 19 points. So I think having those, those pieces that can chip in is something that they didn't really have a whole lot of last year at times. So I think this is it's going to end up being a real nice play from Shire to have this class that can actually shoot.
Yeah, no kidding. The outside shooting has been awesome to watch this season. I'm a big fan of that 3-point shot. We've got a lot of good-looking jump shots as well on this Duke roster. A couple that might need a little bit of work, but they go in, which is what we love to see so far. Anytime you've got a nice shot from the outside, we know Cameron Indoor, the Crazies love the 3 balls, and we are going to see those absolutely flying as we get deeper into the season and when ACC play opens up.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, McCain, his numbers so far, through the LaSalle game, shooting, 45% from 3, and he's you'd think that he's doing that on low numbers, but he's taking 4.5 a game, which is, that's
Awesome.
pretty.
Yeah.
For freshmen, Foster shooting 39%, and Proctor and Roach both at 37.5%. I mean, those are numbers they did not have last year.
Yeah, we'll see it continue for the Duke team, I'm sure, in the games to come. So 5 games into it, what questions do we still have about the Duke team? I think that's where we pivot the conversation. And Brian, let's do that in just a moment. Let's do that after we take our first time out here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here on this Friday is brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Moving forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils alongside Brian Horace at Duke Blogger on Twitter. I'm JJ Jackson. So we teased it a moment ago. We love certain things about the Duke team so far. We've got some certainties that we can say on the team this season. What questions might you still have about the Duke team?
A little unsure of why they are having these slow starts to games. I mean, on one account, you're happy that they're able to take direction at halftime, make adjustments, and come out on fire. But you also want to have them start with a little more enthusiasm, a little more pop. And I don't know if that's just, guys still learning each other or what, but that's the only question I have is, first, 20 minutes, a little, droughty, and then the second half they come out on fire. So I'd like to see, that improve it. I'm just not sure why it's happening, because they really do turn it on after the half, and it could just be youth, infusing that youth, and again, this team is still young, older for a Duke team, but as I said to someone before, sophomores are not seniors.
Yeah.
They are, and it's not quite the same as having juniors and seniors. So there's still a learning, process for them to go through, even as they integrate these freshmen, and those sophomores are also still learning. So we'll see.
If John Shire knew the answer to these slow starts, maybe we wouldn't see them continuing to happen early in the season. 5 games in, so hopefully this isn't kind of a trend that just becomes a thing with the Duke team in particular. You've got to wonder, why have the second halves turned around so much? Does that speak to the type of in-game X's and O's coach that Shire might be himself, and the staff that he's got as well? We give him his flowers and praises, and rightfully so, for what he's able to do on the recruiting trail. We're still trying to figure out what this guy is like in terms of conducting basketball games and how they're played. We've got pretty good evidence so far with the turnarounds that they've had, adjustments that they've made as well, that he's able to change things up in that second half, because slow starts don't become the story of the game, right? The game becomes, hey, look, Duke had nearly a 30-point victory once again earlier in the week.
Exactly. They're definitely, going into the locker room, making those adjustments, and the team is responding to those adjustments, which is exactly what you want. And obviously, we don't expect to finish product 5 games in either. But you have to wonder if it's a matter of these guys are all 5-star players that were the pinnacle of the teams they were on in high school, coming in having to learn to play with other guys that are just as good.
Questions remaining for this team would be, what does the slow starts? And then I think there's also a question out there still with only 5 games being played. We've seen Mark Mitchell miss a game already due to injury. We saw the Filipowski injury scare at the end of last week. We see Christian Reeves currently out with an injury right now. What exactly does this rotation look like a month from now, 2 months from now, when March Madness gets started? I think that's very much still a question that we're asking.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I guess the more you can develop your depth, the easier those questions are to answer as you go forward.
With that being said, on the front, or in the front court, I should say, we saw a big game earlier in the week from Sean Stewart against Michigan State. It was Ryan Young who kind of switched up the pace of it all and made the big plays. Got criticized a good bit for the Arizona loss in particular. Is this something you think we see all season long? Is there going to be one player kind of settling into that kind of secondary big outside of Filipowski that settles into that role? How do you think this all plays out?
It's a good question. And I think that the more they can get, Sean Stewart, into these games, as early as possible, I think the better this team ends up being in March. I mean, what you're going to get for the most part with Ryan Young, but what you don't know is what happens when you bring in this ultra athletic guy who can guard, 5 positions. And, I think that is what is going to sort of be the X factor for this team. Like you mentioned, it's just a matter of getting him accustomed to playing in big games the way he's playing in some of these lesser games. And if they can bring him along, I mean, the way I see it, the less you have to use Ryan Young, and I love Ryan Young as a player. I think he brings a lot to this team in terms of his rebounding. He gets a lot of flack for being a bad defender, but I don't see that whatsoever. But I think the less you have to depend on him, the better this team ends up being later on.
I would agree. I think the ceiling that we kind of talk about often in sports, the floors and ceilings of a team, certainly higher if you've got Sean Stewart out there making plays, reminding people why he's this 5-star recruit that a lot of people in the country wanted to be a part of their team. But there's definitely a role for Ryan Young on this team, because we saw in games like the Michigan State one with so much Big Ten experience from his days back at Northwestern, Ryan Young was someone who just came in and found a way to kind of switch things up, gave the Spartans a different look, right place, right time, kind of knew where to be, where there are still those learning moments, to your point, that Sean Stewart still has to figure out. We talked a lot. We never have to question his effort, right? I think sometimes it's just like, calm down just a little bit. There's a lot of excitement and anxiousness maybe that goes into it when you are playing these big time games for the first time because spastic kind of in a good on the basketball court is what we're seeing from Sean Stewart at times, I would say.
I agree, but the way I see it is the more tools in your toolbox, the better you're going to be, this season especially. And I think, Stewart, the more they can get him into games, 15 minutes, 13 minutes, 14 minutes, I think the better off they'll be.
Totally fair. Totally fair. Talking about the Duke basketball team, a 4-1 start to the season. Another non-conference game coming up a little bit later tonight. Duke set to host Southern Indiana as they close down the Blue Devil Challenge. Arkansas right around the corner. What all do we need to know? We talk about that and more on the other side of our final timeout here on Locked On Blue Devils today. Locked On Blue Devils is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is one of my absolute favorites. It's the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal without hidden fees. Buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Moving forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, I'm JJ Jackson alongside my pal Brian Horace. DukeBlogger.com. Tell us a little bit about your work. If people aren't familiar with the website, following you online, what can they expect, Brian?
Anything that comes out regarding this basketball team, I'll be on it. Whether it's previews for the games coming up, write-ups about the games they've played, any news that comes out in between, recruiting, what have you, come visit.
Check it all out. Yeah, the game previews are something that I absolutely love. And here on this Friday, with the game a little bit later tonight, plenty of opportunity to go check out your website there, looking at the Southern Indiana team. I'm sure you'll have something ahead of the Arkansas game as well, right around the corner. So Duke looking to close out the Blue Devil Challenge against a team like Southern Indiana. What do we need to know? What kind of stands out to you, Brian?
Yeah, they're not having their best season in their. This is what their second year playing in Division One. They're a team that Duke should not have a lot of problems with. At least in the size department, they think they only play one player over 6'8". They have a couple on their roster that don't play, but they're a very small team. I think they're 1-4 at this point in the season, maybe 1-5. I can't remember, but nothing truly stands out. They're not shooting the ball well from three, but they're not going to come in scared of Duke. This much I know, and every team's looking to knock off the Blue Devils, especially in Cameron Indoors. So if Duke can control those guards, Jeremiah Hernandez and AJ Smith, who are having pretty decent seasons, then I think they should be just fine.
Yeah, we've already seen both the teams that Duke has already played in the Blue Devil Challenge, that being LaSalle and Bucknell, play Southern Indiana. They both defeated Southern Indiana, so that would tend to believe that we do the transitive property sometimes from time to time, and you just know if you're a basketball observer, Duke is supposed to win this game tonight a little bit later. I think one of the only notable things that I certainly know about the Southern Indiana team, to your point, only their second season in Division One. For 10 years in the 90s, Bruce Pearl walked up and down their sidelines as their head coach. So not this big program that so many people know about. Duke should have no problems here a little bit later this evening. But with that said, after this game is played, for the first time ever, Duke gets set for their first true road game of the season when they go take on Arkansas in Fayetteville. What are you expecting in that one? I think it's going to be absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it's going to be nuts. If you've seen that arena, it jumps. It's going to be. I don't know if it's optimal for your first road game, but it's going to be a big time game, Final Four atmosphere, and honestly a huge test for Duke. In this game. But I think they're going to pull it out. I think they have a chance to really to make a statement in this game.
We'll be able to have a little bit more on Arkansas next week as we get closer to it, and we've got the ACC-SEC Challenge there. I will say Bud Walton Arena has been known to be one of the toughest places to play in all of college basketball. However, that was not the case already this season with the fellow team from North Carolina, UNC Greensboro, went into Bud Walton and defeated Arkansas by 6 points. Crazy, crazy win to start the year there for the Spartans of UNCG.
Almost definitely. And I know that's going to give them some, little added angst coming in, to play Duke. So it's going to be an interesting game. I can't imagine they're happy with themselves after that particular loss, especially on your own home court. That's a rough one.
Absolutely. Well, Brian, it's always fun talking Duke basketball with you. We've got fun games coming up here over the next few days and weeks, and we'll, of course, be following along with all of your work at Duke Blogger on X. Tell us a little bit more about the work that you've got there and what people can expect, if you will.
Yeah, just someone who follows the game. Haven't missed a minute of Duke basketball in, probably a decade. And I'm going to keep up, the same exact stuff, making sure I write about everything that's happening, everything that's going on. You can follow me on Twitter, and I'm, responsive and like to get into it with the fans. And it's a fun time.
Can't wait. Brian, thank you so much for the time today. As always, looking forward to talking again soon. Okay.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, that's Brian Horace, and he's joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, and that's going to do it for our show here today. Thank you for your support always. Best of luck to Duke a little bit later tonight against Southern Indiana. Fun fact, the ESPN Basketball Index gives Duke a 99% chance of winning the game tonight. We think this can happen for the Dukies a little bit later. That'll do it for our show here today. Thanks, as always. My name is JJ Jackson, saying so long, thank you, and good day.